Okay, so first of all, there is something we need to talk about, and that is the state of the world and how people behave when they're being laid off, and what happens societally, what happens in a society when people lose their jobs, when they no longer can afford the lifestyle that they thought they would. And I will share you what I know, which is enough yet still very little. And I'm researching more on what happens in Sweden, but I'm more and most interested, don't mind this, on how life is for people, actually. Like, not no statistics, no, all that is, I think, just another smokescreen. Because I've read so many statistics and so much research just to be like, okay, but still, I like to see or to know what happens in underground. And underground doesn't look so good right now. And I'm going to tell you why. I have a friend who is undergoing this like Arbetsförmedlingen program. If you live in Sweden, then you know what I'm talking about. But it's basically public employment agency, which is extremely interesting because it's a public agency for employment. We don't know if it's government or not, or I don't know, but it will be really interesting to find that out. And if you do know, let me know. And it gives people who are unemployed benefits. These benefits, under certain conditions, by the way, like if you've been unemployed for some time, are approximately 1,200, 300 euros. I have spoken to someone who's went to these meetings and translated and told me word for word what they experienced. And here's what I experienced. So highly unqualified people come to talk. It is extremely easy to get things misinterpreted, for things to get lost in translation, for things to be very unclear because blanket statements are used, such as you will get informed without when and how. You will have financial support until a certain period, so you don't even know when. All of this is only making people more and more stressful. You would normally think that because they have money and they can survive, that they can, have enough for sustenance and relax. But the brain doesn't function like that. And I'm not going to go too deep into the neuroscience behind it, but unless we have at least some notion of, foreseeable future in which we don't have to worry about basic conditions, if you follow, for example, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you need shelter, food, and you need warmth and basic, um, physiological needs being met, such as, food and water, unless I already said food. And the problem here is that now, after a few months, with no warning whatsoever, the rug got pulled from under these people. And now the government said, well, you're going to get half. But the problem with this is that in the eyes of the government, I'm certain that they think that this motivates people. And I'm certain that people really do believe that they are more motivated to do better when their back is against the wall. And that is not the case. We actually perform incredibly well when there is a stable period of stasis, homeostasis, and where we have actually a relaxed nervous system and bodies that can get us to self-initialize, self-initiate work, productive work, creative work, which makes us far better. I don't like the word workers because it implies hierarchy, but I will use employee, which is still the same thing. However, whichever house you belong to. Since you're constantly stressed because you don't know where the next meal is coming from, and you know that the only one providing you with the sustenance for that meal is the government, then what naturally happens is there is this Stockholm syndrome going on, where there's a hostage non-negotiation happening, where no matter what, you are either going to comply to this or you won't. But if your wage is halved, cut in half, and you no longer can afford rent, that is an enormous problem, because obviously the society doesn't have the mechanisms in place to ask people who are applying for these benefits what their costs are, but they treat them all equally across the spectrum. And this is not equity, and it's not equality. Equality would mean having a certain standard for everyone individually based on their needs. And of course, expecting certain outcomes in return if they are needed. What is happening right now is extremely dangerous because what is going to happen is there's going to be a whole wave of people that will be unemployed, that will not have enough to cover their costs and expenses, and they will just be juggled back to the hierarchical bottom of starting at some place that they're clearly not qualified for, but they are qualified in other realms of business and life in which they, for some reason, one reason or the other, cannot find work. It is insane what is happening because this is 21st century and we still do not have the resources and the systems to accurately determine how many people need how much help. And if you're wondering why, you need to think of one really important thing. The government knows where your money goes. Every transaction can be traced. Every exchange can be traced, digital, which is why the government wants to go digital. And I'm not being conspiratorial here, just bear with me. And here's a question for you. Can you follow where your money goes? Can you see how complicit you are in funding genocide, wars, criminal and violence? Because this is what is called withdrawal of consent. This is happening without your conscious consent. And we've reached a point as societies where this is changing fundamentally, but it depends on one key factor there, and that's you. That's people like me and you. That's me, that's you. And that is not accepting subhuman standard. This is 21st century, 2025. We no longer only focus on basic physical conditions for survival. We are human beings. We are not objects to be rented. We need love, care, respect, community, guidance, mentorship, everything that forms a community or a tribe, which gives us a sense of belonging and purpose. When we have a sense of belonging and purpose, nothing gets in our way and everything becomes so much easier. The challenge is to make this into the official approach of how things in societies will function from now and into the future. And this depends on how far you're willing to sacrifice yourself to either settle for what you're being given, which is the illusion of choice, which is either have this or have that, which is no choice at all if you think about it, because if someone offers you a choice or two choices, if you have a binary choice, then rest assured that both of those choices benefit the person offering those choices much more than they benefit you. That's the law, that's how it is. Now, if you're someone who doesn't know how to negotiate and who doesn't know how to minimize your losses and maximize your gains, if you don't know what prisoner's dilemma is, if you don't know what game theory is, if you don't know what tit for tat is, maybe you never learned how to actually go for what you want and know your value and worth, which is maybe what distinguishes you from people who are wealthy and rich. Not because they inherited it, because they made it, and because there are people like these. My message to you who's watching or listening to this is make the right choice, because whichever choice you make, other people are going to look at you and they're going to gauge within themselves what choice they should make for their lives. If you choose to be a slave for the wage and the price that someone else put on you, you're no better than a product that someone else gets to buy, use, and dispose of when it's no longer usable. Or you can choose to create completely new systems from scratch. No more upgrades. I know this sounds insane, but no more add-ons, upgrades, and whatnot. We sit and we figure out exactly what is wrong. No censorship, no Epstein files being hidden for 10 years and that creating a whole vacuum in the history of mankind. And that's just the one problem and one set of documents, by the way. No more waiting. None of us can afford to wait. Not because things are, urgent or burning, but that we can prevent them from getting there. We don't have to see the world burn to actually do something about it. And because we can prevent there being forest fire by not throwing bottles in the forest, by respecting the laws of the forest. So with having said this, make sure you know which side you're choosing if you think there is a side. And if you think there is a side, that means you have something called class consciousness or class awareness. Think and read about this and get informed and educated. Read books that are controversial. Hear opinions that are controversial, that are historically accurate. First-hand experiences, not propaganda, not brainwashing, not some programs that are meant to make you something you're not. There's a big difference between a thinker, a critical thinker, and someone who is brainwashed and conditioned to repeat stuff. I've been on both spectrums of that, and the derealization I had from realizing how much I was suffering as a human being while I was in the former simply told me or communicated with me or whatever you will that there's no way I'm gonna go back there. Not because it's a statement, not because I have something to prove, but because to me that equates death. Death of this and death of this. And that I'm no longer willing to sacrifice. Choice is yours.